Now what I want to show you here is, we got the tints and shades here. I want to show you some work with dimension and objects. Because yes, I can create kind of 3D looking objects right here, and this is just a couple shapes. I've done both 2D and 3D objects throughout here. Got some flat objects, flat, some three-dimensional objects, flat, three-dimensional, yeah. So I want to create some really cool but really hard to do dimensional objects. Now, the reason why I do dimensional objects in some of these cases is because I may want to go ahead and create some really cool visual effect like we did over here. I may be doing some type of process where I've got paper or something going through the dryer, making something happen, and a simple icon of paper going through a dryer isn't something that everybody's going to understand. If you write an envelope or you do a $sign, people understand that. Simple as possible works. But if I'm doing an infographic here of a mechanical process that not everybody understands, I may be a little bit more specific and less iconic, but even still, I have stuff going through a roller. Shadow, light, pretty simple, okay? People would not understand what this icon is, but if you were in the industry, you could understand. So going through and creating simple dimension on objects here, really quite easy. We had done that yesterday with a little roll of tape right here, which was nothing more than two ovals and things being all put together. So I'm going to revisit that dimensional thing, creating manual dimension on objects, and then I'm going to go and create three-dimensional objects using the 3D feature here, which, if anybody remembers, years ago, was Adobe Dimensions, which was this separate little application. I think it was back in 1927 that Adobe Dimensions came out. I can remember. You know? So, simple dimensional objects here. If I were to take a circle and I wanted to create some type of cylinder with this circle, I could very easily take this, and if I just use my Option up arrow, I simply duplicate that numerous times, and that's going to go ahead and create a fantastic cylinder. Okay? I'm just holding down my Option and my up arrow key. And then the top item right here, if I want to show a little bit of highlight on there, I'm simply going to make it lighter, okay? It's great. It shows me a really cool cylinder there. I could select everything except the top one. Select everyone but the top one right there. Use my, get rid of my, right there, Pathfinder, put it all together so it becomes one object, cap, and the entire object. And now, if I wanted to create a chart of items that are going to be tall and short, I can simply duplicate this, and I could just click on the bottom here, and I could just run these right down. Okay? Tall, short, whatever it is, you know. So, want to create a soda can or something with 3 dimensions? Easy. Awesome. Okay? That's fairly simple. I can do this with a box as well. You know, I simply take a box. If I want to do it at an angle, yeah, easy. I can just take this and I can just skew it up one side there, and then of course, you know, go in, Option up arrow, and Option up arrow, not Shift up arrow. I can do that, and I can very easily create something that goes off into the distance as some type of bar of some sort. Okay, there it is. Have it go off in the distance. I think this works a little bit better here. Let me try it this way. There we go. So we can do some type of chart that gives you a little vertical bar there. I think it needs to be yellow from the sun right there. There we go. Now I can create the same kind of vertical looking graphic that I did with these as well. And I can create this little bar chart that goes up or sideways or whatever. And just literally holding down the Option key and the up arrow and do that. Boom, 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 right there.
Is there a faster way to do that?
Yes, there is.
Holding down?
No, because if I don't hold down, if I do it faster, it's going to do it in faster steps, and therefore it's going to leave big gaps.
Right.
Yes, so no. But you know, I mean, how much better way to build 3D?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool.
And so, great question. Yeah. So I can get 3-dimensional things right there as well. What I like is this. How do you take a pie chart and make it dimensional? Taking something like this and turning it into something dimensional. I'm going to copy this over here, and I'm going to paste it, and here is my dimensional pie chart. This is the cool one. because this is not easy to do. Yes, I can take a circle or a square or something like that, but I want to take my pie chart right here, and I want to create something like this, but actually have it be divided. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to flatten it out so I can get the foreshortening in there. And then I'm going to start at the bottom here, and I'm just going to go through and I'm going to change the colors a bit on these just so we can get the different qualities of color here. I'm just going to sample from other ones here that I'm using in my graphic with the eyedropper tool. Okay, so here's my sections, and I'm going to go and I'm going to hold down my Option key, and I'm going to be building my little pie chart that's going to have certain depth to the whole thing. Now what's awesome about this is that if you try to draw this with a pen tool to get the dimension of a cylinder, I can tell you it's not easy. But that's why I make it easy, because I told you this was going to be easy, and so far I'm right. So now I have my pie charts all broken out with everything, and we're going to get there. So there it is. So when I have to draw my piece of cheese for the grocery store, this may work just fine. And then I can take this one, of course, hold down the Option key, and I can create this. This is the tricky part, to create curved dimension in front and flat on the other sides. There it is. There's my dimension. Select the whole thing. Awesome. There's my pie chart. And then last but not least, I'm going to go through and do this. And darken the top right there. Awesome. Group these all together because I've got tons and tons and tons of stuff. Group, group, group. Awesome. Now, I can now put this together. Align those bottoms up there so that all works. And I can go ahead and I can put this in front of each other right there, or I can kind of spread those off to the side, however I want to. And now I can actually see, I can kind of cheat that if I want to, put that behind. So I can actually create a chart that shows the different depths or dimensions here of all the different items. Right there. Better yet, these are all kind of put together in one. If I were to take all of these and I were to take a circle here, I'm going to take the circle, I'm just going to divide it up into sections. Let's see. How do I want to divide this up into sections? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy and paste that. I don't want to do that. I want to divide this up really nice and easy sections. So I'm just going to take my line here, right from the center, divide those up, use the divide, okay, ungroup the whole thing, and then I'll rotate this, and actually I'm going to skew it first, like so, and I want to rotate it first. Rotate that, and then I can go ahead and I can skew the whole thing, like so. No, I want to do that. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. Here's what I wanted to do. I want to take my, because once you skew it, or once you rotate it, then all your skew points are always going to be level with the sides. So here's what I want to do. I want to grab all this stuff. Here we go. This is what I want to do. Grab my dividers, rotate the whole thing a certain distance, then go in, divide the whole thing. Now I've got this. Now I can go ahead and skew it like that, and then ungroup the whole thing. Now I've got each and every element here. So now I can then go in and I can build that chart that I can actually see around, and I can actually see the roundness of the chart as I go. Make that lighter, and now I can see my little pie charts. There we go. Now we can create a graphic that we can truly understand. There it is. Of course, this needs to go behind right there, and that top one needs to become lighter because of the light on the top of it there. This one's going to become orange, and then that one's going to be built up really far because that's going to go beyond the edge. Of course, I set that behind, and you're freaking out because you see this weird shape and it doesn't make any sense, but it totally makes sense once you put the white on top and you send that little one to the back there, and then you go ahead and you build that up behind, and all of a sudden, before you know it, the pillar of success comes to greet you. And it's working. It's getting there. A little bit more water. Awesome. Okay. And then that, of course, we go ahead and apply a color to, or a lighter color. And now we have our segmented pie chart that actually looks like a really cool pie chart. And all it was just duplication. Now, as I go through here, I tend to do one section at a time and then group the entire thing so that I have all that stuff, because if I showed you the layers panel here and I didn't have them grouped, you're going to see like 50,000 layers of this here, which makes an absolute mess trying to get in. But there you have a dimensional pie chart there that works pretty slick. Okay? If you have to be very exact on the heights of all these things here, when we come back from break, I'm going to show you the graphing tools. And so I could go in and I could create a really quick graph that I could get relative heights of things, and I could just draw bars next to it. Or, you know, quite simply, here's another way that I do proportions of things. So say I want to do, you know, this is 50%, this is 22%, and I don't want to draw a chart. Here's just one of these weird things that I do. I go in and I draw a container, okay? And I draw a container, I don't care what the width is, 1/2 inch is fine. But I'll go in, and if I'm going to do something in terms of percentage, like this is going to be 57%, you know, of the overall height of something, I type in like 55 millimeters, because 55 millimeters is 55 of something. Then if I draw another something right here, then I can go ahead and I can draw another container right here. I just simply click. And this one is, so this was 55%, this one's going to be 25%, so that's going to be 25 millimeters. So I put that there, and it's like, okay, you know, if that's 55, this is 25. And then I can go in and I can draw another box right here, and it's like, okay, this is 55, 25, and so what are we at? 80%? And so this one, the other one's 20%, so I do 20 millimeters right there, and there I have my percentages all spelled out perfectly in something that's relative. You know, because this is, you know, you add these all together and these do become 100%. I just use a really small measurement, like millimeters. And there you have it. So now if I needed to go through here and I needed to say, okay, you know, if this is 12%, I could go in here and I could draw a box 12% and line it up right there and say, yeah, you know, that's the right height. So yeah, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. And that's how I go through and do my percentages and my values here to make sure. There's no calculation to this here, you know, because 100% is just 100 units of whatever. So as long as all my millimeters add up to 100, whatever. I don't care how you want to do that. This is years of having no television. I sat there by the radio trying to think of how to contemplate percentages because, you know, I never saw Sesame Street. Really? I know. And the electric company, all those things that people would talk about, it's like, what? Didn't know. So I went ahead and I figured this stuff out this way by going through and doing that. So that's what I call the cheater way of doing dimensional charts. But look at that. I mean, is that not cool? That's so totally cool. And the reason why I do it this way is because when I break this all down, I have the ability to go ahead and put a different color on the top, but it keeps everything really simple. When we get back from break and I show you the three-dimensional tools where we go in and we actually build using the three-dimensional feature here, that begins to bring in shadow and shading. So we have gradients for shadow and gradients for shading here, which introduces a whole different picture to things and a whole different quality of character. This I like to keep really simple. One of the things with this though, as you can see, if I go in here and I grab this, I want to be able to go in, I'm going to go into my preview mode here. And that doesn't do very good with the preview mode because I can't really tell where the edge of my lines are. I'm just going to grab this whole thing and I'm going to group it so I have that together so I can pull that apart. And then I'm going to grab this and group it so I can pull this apart. And then I grab this and group it so I can pull this apart. And then I group that. There we go. So now I have all of my shapes all done. Now, if I look at this one, all this is a series of lines. Of course, when I go in outline mode, this tells me nothing because I'd have to zoom in really, really, really close to see how this whole thing is built. So that's useful, but what happens if I want to go in and so something like this, I would like to change the values of one of the sides here. Well, I can't because I can't just go in and change a singular line segment here. So with something like this, what I would end up doing is I'd end up going in, I'd end up ungrouping this and getting rid of the last, just the top layer here. And we just merge the whole thing together. So it becomes one solid block. So this becomes a cap right here. And then with something like this, all I would do is I would just take the side here and really simply and quickly, I would just go in with like a rectangle tool, line it up right there, and simply chop off the portion that I don't want. And then I can very easily go in here and I can lighten or darken that. And of course, because I have my smart guides, I can then go in here and it's going to tell me exactly where things are going to line up right there. Of course, put the cap back on the front there, and now I can create a dimensional block right here. Okay? I didn't start by drawing this all out, okay? Because trying to draw this and conceptualize the right angles here that you have in the dimension and perspective along with the curve doesn't work. But once you understand the construction of this, I think you'll begin to see how everything really can go together. You notice how I had the problem conceptualizing taking the circle and then chopping it up? I had to do the circle, turn the lines, chop it, and then put it into perspective in order to get everything skewed off. So that's how you got it, right there.
Ready for a couple questions
I am ready.
Before we cap this? No pun intended.
Sure.
So let's see, where do I want to start with? I'm going to start with Mad Panda, who says, "Good morning, Jason. I was practicing with the Pathfinder last night after viewing the course. However, when I tried to use the minus front option, a window appeared that said, filter produced no results. Please select 2 overlapping paths." What am I doing wrong here?
So here's a perfect example. So anything that's in front right here, if you use the minus front, if I put something here, clearly this is in front, and I use the minus front right here, it's going to knock out what's in front and leave the resulting shape. If I were to have this over here, so it's not touching right here, and I use the minus front feature, what happens is nothing really happens. I don't know how you're going to get I know that dialog box comes up. I don't know how that dialog box comes up. Let me try this. Let me switch this so that the stroke is here. So I have a stroke on the object here, and I have a fill on the object here. So I go in and I choose minus front. No, it does it, because it still pays attention to the shape right there. So I used to come up with that, but I think I just worked my way around it. So usually what happens when the filter produces no effect, it could be because you have multiple things selected at once, or you have different fills and strokes on there. And there's a third one. It's like when you're trying to do multiple things with maybe something that's already been punched out, or you're trying to punch out something and you're trying to do multiple combinations of things all at once.
What if you had 3 objects selected?
Well, so yeah, let me do this, 3 objects minus front. It still does it, because the frontmost object is going to do that.
Right.
Let me do this. That's the problem with getting really good. Anytime I create a problem, right. I solve the problem and I just don't do it again.
Yeah.
So if she can kind of give me an idea of what she was doing,
okay,
and just kind of give me a scenario, I can walk through it really quick.
Great.
Yeah.
And then, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So
and then on this one, I don't know if I understand it, but I'm going to ask it anyway, from FX Mark. How do you select objects by surrounding them with the selection tool instead of by touching them? Or can you turn off the touching feature by only being able to select by surrounding a particular object?
So what you're saying is, I select things just by taking my selection tool and clicking and dragging over them, okay? So if I go through and I select multiple objects, and I don't know if this, how do I deselect them? I could just hold down my shift key and select over them, because shift is going to allow me to select or deselect as well. So if I want to come through here and I want to deselect multiple objects, I can just always hold down my shift key as well. Illustrator has the default that when you go and you hover over something, it shows you where it is, and you can just simply click on it as you go. So I don't know if that was kind of the question.
I think so. And then folks were asking about naming of layers. I'll just leave it at that.
And naming of layers is great. One of the things that I always encourage, especially in Photoshop, I always encourage the naming of layers. Now, here's one of the awesome things with working with infographics. Because I work with lines, circles, squares, triangles, rectangles, okay? You'll notice in here, when I do this, all of my stuff will be named, you know, either a path or a rectangle or a square or a circle as I do this. Anything that's going to have multiple objects is going to be put into a group. One of the things I did, but I didn't mention, is it went under my panel options and I made the thumbnail large, or I could make it even larger here. where I can visually see what's going on in my layers panel. So naming them is great, but seriously, I have so many things in here that I don't know that going through and labeling them is going to do much good. You know, this is compound shape. I clearly understand it's a fish. By naming it a fish, because I don't usually search via names of them. In Photoshop, yes. In Illustrator, no, because I work more on the visual basis of putting this together. Like this, I know is all of my little fan blades.